Welcome to part 2 of Causal and Phenomenological Systems and Potential World Touching the Unknown Truth amongst the series of Psychoanalysis and Homeopathy. Somewhere deep down, we were into the discussion of how the causality model would fit in a nearby future in the realm of homeopathy or not. And somewhere we were also discussing some of the crucial terminologies used in the world of homeopathy. So one of the central ideas is that of a potentialization. What it is about? Can we just have more of that term and what does it actually signifies?
Uh, Potentialization means, as the word suggests, to release the potential characteristic of a material to get something done. Like the idea is that if you take common salt, a pinch of it, it is not going to cure anything unless you have a low blood pressure temporarily, that kind of thing. But usually it will not cure anything. Also, in small quantities, it's not going to do anything to you, not cause any symptoms or any healing. But if you potentialize it, which means if you take a very small quantity, put it into a large quantity of water or alcohol, stir it, shake it, and then take a drop from it, add to another large quantity of water or alcohol, and keep repeating the process of shaking and mixing. So over a period of time, or after some repetitions, it will acquire a different characteristic. Then if you take a drop of it on your tongue, you will see symptoms coming up or healing happening. Which means a normal material, when you make it undergo dilution and shaking or succussion, it then goes into the human body and creates a completely different set of events. So it is no longer the ordinary material, it is in the gross natural form. So any material which we see before us, if we take a tiny component of it and undergo this process of dilution and shaking and potentialization, some people use the banging technique, some people use slightly other technique, but there are two essential components. One component is successive dilution and jerking in some way to release the potential. And this somehow releases the latent characteristics of that material. This is potentialization. Now, this is the central discovery of homeopathy, that you can take any material, which can be a banal material like salt or anything else, or it can be even a poisonous material.
Mm-hmm.
And if you successively dilute it to a very high degree, the material practically ceases to exist, and therefore it is no longer a poison. And in fact, it cures many sicknesses. And therefore, many homeopathic medicines are actually made from the different components of snakes, some of which are poisonous components. Some of the medicines are made from otherwise poisonous substances. Say, for example, arsenic, lead, lithium, that if you consume in raw form, it's toxic. But when you potentialize it, the toxicity goes away. It becomes actually a healing substance, a medicine. So the central discovery is this, that if you take any material, raw or created, naturally occurring or created, and you successively dilute it and shake it or bang it or do some succussion or stir it, it releases some latent characteristic of that material. This is the central discovery. Now, this central discovery was put to use for healing. So what happens is, you have this central discovery that this potentialized materials can be potentialized, and potentialized materials at some degree of their potentialization can create symptoms, and at some degree can heal symptoms. This is a central discovery. Now, how to use this discovery, that is one side of the whole game. That how do you select the remedy? So that is where the Materia Medica, repertory, the kingdom approach, the miasm approach, the genus approach, the class subclass approach, the superclass approach, all of them are trying to answer the how question, how to use this central discovery for healing. Now, on the other side is, how is this working in causal terms? And this can be deconstructed into two components. How can we understand it working in psychological terms, and how we can understand it working in empirical biochemical terms? So this is one side of the central discovery in the middle. And then you have on the right side how to use it for healing in homeopathy and all the approaches. On this side, how is it working in terms of the sequence of events it undergoes? And that would be psychological and then empirical. And then on the extreme side of the left of this side would be the philosophy and spirituality. So the philosophy would be that what is the design in nature? Why do we find what we find? That for sicknesses, we have in nature materials which can be potentialized and used for healing. So in Ayurveda, they say that whatever sickness you have, by and large, within 100-kilometer area, you will find some herb which will be useful for that sickness. Now, this does not factor in sickness brought in by somebody coming from another country, because he would come in plane or steamer, which was much ahead later than Ayurveda. But if in early natural form where the travel was limited, it would be that in 100-kilometer area, by and large, you will find a herb for what you need. Very few herbs would be rare and have to be brought from outside. One example would be Sanjeevani and Himalayan herbs, which had to be brought from outside to the rest of India. And that would be minority of herbs, but most of them will be found. Now, is that kind of logic at work in design in nature? That for every ill, there is some material which can be potentialized and used. It is just that we have not found that material. Or that there is partial design and we have to actually create materials where we cannot find a natural material to cure. And then what does it say about the grand design in nature, of which all this part is a small component of the whole thing? So this is one aspect of it. And the second question that comes is, why limit it to human healing? Because if potentialization, if potentialization can release such forces in materials, then why limit the application only to human healing? Why not to take it to plants and animals, which people have done, taking homeopathic medications for plants and animals? And then the question comes, why not take it beyond healing? Why not? Why it cannot be used for recreational purposes? Instead of using drugs, why not use safe homeopathic substitutes to have the same experiences which people have in drugs which they like? They go again and again to the drugs for the same experiences. So can we have a homeopathic or potentialized range, if not, let's not use that word, but potentialized range of substances? Why can't they be used for well-being and feeling good? That you want to experience certain states of mind, why can't potentialized substance be used for that?
That reminds me of those crazy mushrooms.
Correct, correct. So that brings up a very good point which you have raised. Okay, maybe what the shamans have been using to bring in altered states of consciousness in which many things are done, spiritual as well as biological healing, and maybe certain other things of exploration of consciousness. So what the shamans are using, how is that taking effect? There are two ways about it. One, we may be looking at an Ayurvedic way of something taking effect, or we may be looking at something taking effect through an homeopathic action. If something is diluted successively in the whole shamanic preparation, then he may be ingesting it as an Ayurvedic herb, but the action in the body may be homeopathic. So that is very important where it can be taken. And one rare area which people talk about is about eugenics. Can this kind of potentialized substances be used to improve the breed of plants and animals? And that will raise a question about human beings, which is a taboo question related to eugenics. But of course, substances can be found. We may have government control about it, but it can always be found. Why not? There is no law of nature which says that potentialized substances can be used only for homeopathic healing and not outside it. So this remains this whole world, this whole potential world, because the primary discovery of potentialization opens up a whole world. What happens when we potentialize these millions and billions of materials around us? Some of them may have no healing effect in human beings, but may have a lot of effects in some plants and animals. Who knows? Some of them may have effect only at certain potencies, not the standard potencies. So this whole potential world, the world of potentialized materials, and there are billions of it, is something that we are yet to discover fully in all its applications. And this also leads us to another philosophical point of, rather metapsychological point of types of complexes, which will come up slightly later. But the idea is that can we have different types of potentialized materials for different types of different range of complexes? I'll come to it slightly later.
Somewhere you mentioned about the philosophical aspect of it. How does that interface work?
There are two components of it. One component is the whole idea of design. That why nature has kept such a characteristic latent in materials that they can be potentialized and put to use. What is the intent behind it? And is the intent limited to homeopathic healing, or can it be taken to other areas of existence? That is one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is, can we link it to the chakras and to the life energy? That is it that different potentialized substances act at different layers of the body? That some of them might be acting on a particular chakra in a particular way, or they might be acting on the life energy body and blockages there in a particular way. Second philosophical aspect of it, when you combine potentialized substances with pranic healing. Third aspect is about the type of complexes. That are we looking at a whole canvas of different types of complexes? So if you take Jung's definition, co-definition of a complex, it's an idea told with affect. Now there is an idea and there is an affect surrounding it. And between them is some force which keeps the affect bound with the idea. That force, let me call it affinity. That which binds the affect to the idea. And often we find in OCD that the two separate. The idea becomes conscious, but the affect is not released. So what happens is the obsession changes from one to another. One obsession goes away and the second obsession develops. Because the affect is not cathartically removed. So if we take this kind of a model of the core complex, then the whole idea will be what all will break this complex. So we know what all heals. Cognition heals, catharsis heals, internalization of a good object heals, safety heals, life experiences heals, a wide variety of things. So wider question, what heals in psychotherapy? And we have discussed it before, and I think we have put out almost 25 to 50 entities which are participating in healing in psychotherapy. So all of that happens. The point here is, if we have different types of complexes, that let us say we are dealing with an exponential nonlinear world of complexes, and strength of the complexes are different. Let us hypothetically say strength 1 to 10. The complexes are such, you make an interpretation and the complex is erased. It's healed. 10 to 20, you give a homeopathic medication and it goes, single dose. Say 20 to 50, you have to keep repeating it for a long time, then it goes. Say 50 to 75, it's a complex constellation. You first have to heal the leaf, the branch, the trunk, and then you come to the root. And then something else, the moment you try to touch the root, aggravation comes. So we have not modeled this core sickness entity is called the complexes. Because the moment you say that psychological entities are somatizing in form of sickness, if this is the basis, then the question is, what are those core psychological sickness entities? The core generators of sickness. And the core generators then will be what we call the complex. And then there will be a whole world of complexes. And we'll have to map out the characteristics of complexes and impose some sort of typology. That A group of complexes, B group of complexes, and this will then get linked to the type of homeopathic medication you use, the potency that you use, or some sort of a grouping that you will have to use, one after the other. And this links up to what we said before, that maybe you have to first heal the focus demanding small traumas before you can go to the core trauma. And if you straight away want to go to the core trauma, either it does not respond or it gets an aggravation. So this whole world of complexes will have to be mapped out. And you can do it in different ways. For example, you can divide them in terms of intensity. You can divide them in terms of the affect involved. What is the affect involved in the complex? Is it only fear? Is it shame? Is it guilt? Is it envy? Is it anger? What is it? What is involved? So the affect involved can be second. Age at which it has happened. Third, has it happened according to normal developmental processes that all of us have to undergo the split and the Oedipus, or has it occurred apart from this? The non-normal developmental susceptibility points. So we can classify complexes in different ways and then bring that to homeopathy. So this is where the conceptual modeling in psychoanalysis and heat that helps in homeopathy. And then when you bring in heat, it brings in the holistic dimension. That when you bring in the tantric model of the mind, and this is also, we are seeing still this side. We are not looking at this side of how to use. We are not looking at using materia medica, repertory, miasm, kingdom, class, superclass. We are not looking how to use it. We are looking at the other side of it, the process and the causality side of it. And there the model of the mind will inevitably come in at some level. So the moment we start to understand in terms of psychological causality, at some point, the model of the mind will come in. And that is where the heat model comes up. Then the heat model can provide a holistic model of the mind, a holistic functional model, partly experiential, partly metaphoric. And that will allow us to get into the causality analysis of certain parts of homeopathy before one actually goes into the empirical proving of it. So this is how the philosophical aspect of the intersection of the two that comes together. And one more aspect is what we said before, the coming together of a phenomenological system and a causal system. And the natural synergy and the advantages and the benefits of it.
So where do we go from here then?
From materia medica and repertory to the kingdoms, to miasms, to genus, to subclass to superclass. From there, which is where they are actually, from here, where we are, to psychoanalysis, from there to psychotherapy, from there to heat, from there to integrated homeopathic model, from there to biology, from there to spirituality, and from there to philosophy. So I always have a theory of everything ready. You just have to ask for it, and lo and behold, here it comes. So I speak from across the clouds with lightning and thunder. So lo and behold, there it is. I feel this will be the progression in some way or the other. Maybe something first, something later, something today, something day after, minor variations. But with some modifications, largely this will be the role of events.
I presume we are taking preparatory steps and clearing the ground for a homeopathy psychoanalysis interface. I find it very interesting and hope our viewers also enjoy and learn and be more hopeful towards the new world of healing. See you all again. Namaste.
Namaste.